Yo, what's up? I haven't figured out my set intro yet. I don't know if there's actually going to be a set intro. It might just be different and random every time. But if you guys have any ideas, leave it in the comments. Or we'll just, take it day by day and just see what happens, what it turns into over time. But anyway, in the last devotional, we saw how, we read how Jesus found Philip. And by simply saying, "Follow me," Philip did. And then Philip went and told his friend Nathanael, "Come and see." And Nathanael was like, "Wait, Jesus of Nazareth? What good can come of Nazareth?" And then that's where we pick up right here. This devotional is going to be on John 1, verses 47 through 51. It's going to close out chapter 1 of the Gospel of John. Cruising right along. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him. This is right after Philip said, "Come and see." Jesus saw him coming toward him, and he said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" Jesus answered and said to him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." Now, real quick, Jesus is making an observation of Nathanael here. As soon as he sees him, and he basically says to Jesus, like, "You don't even know me. Like, who are you?" Because understandably, his friend Philip just told him that he saw the Messiah, and "I want you to come meet him." But he tells him he's from Nazareth. And like I talked about in the previous devotional, they didn't really think much of Nazareth at all. They thought it was like the lowest of the low. And growing up, any Jewish boy, any Jewish person would have thought that the Messiah was going to come all high and mighty, and he was coming to overthrow Rome. So he was never, in their mind, going to ever be coming from a place like Nazareth. So when Jesus is saying this to him, and then Nathanael is like, "How do you know me?" He has no clue. Like, he's been told that he's the Messiah, but he's not a believer right then. He's not like on that bandwagon yet. All right. So whenever Jesus says, "I saw you underneath the fig tree," now this is like a rabbinical term, like regarding doing devotions, praying and just meditating on the word. Like, that was a rabbinical term, like representing that underneath the fig tree. He didn't necessarily like literally need to be under a fig tree. He could have been. I know the show The Chosen, and they don't, like, the show is biblically based, but they take creative liberties in the show. Some people don't like that. I understand. For me, it doesn't bother me. For me, it's things that are plausible. It's things that could have happened. And I remember Nathanael, who was an architect, came to meet Jesus, but prior to that, he was like really sad and really broken, and he was spending time in scriptures underneath a fig tree, right? And then in the next scene, or a little bit later in the episode, maybe it was the next episode, Jesus says, "I saw you underneath the fig tree." And then it does like this flashback when he was under the fig tree. And Nathanael was like, "Wait." And no one told Jesus that. He didn't like Nathanael didn't tell Jesus that. How did he know that? And it was just such a profound and impactful moment for him, because he's like, wait, he just basically told me what I was doing. He just saw me underneath the fig tree. So it could have been like that. But like I said, it's also a rabbinical term just representing him meditating on the word and doing his devotions. So Jesus is basically saying to him, though, here, "I saw you when you were doing your devotions in the morning." So maybe Nathanael had been reading, and Jesus just calls him out on that and just says, "Look, hey, I know you." And Nathanael's like, "How do you know me?" Now, also, for what it's worth, we don't know if this is all of what happened, because when we're reading scriptures, it could have just been the bullet points. Because literally, if this is a firsthand eyewitness testimony of what these people saw, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and his disciples, if this is an eyewitness testimony of what they saw, but John wrote his like well after, like 60 or 70 years or so after the other gospels, he could have just been given the bullet points. So maybe there was more that was said, or more detail that Jesus said, and John is just like highlighting, basically, this is all that Jesus said. That could be the case. At the end of the Gospel of John, John says that the whole world, I suppose, couldn't contain everything that Jesus did. And that includes everything that he said. So if he's giving bullet points of things and not telling us the whole dialogue, that would also make sense. And maybe it wasn't just simply, "I saw you underneath the fig tree." Maybe it was something further. Now, verse 49, Nathanael answered and said to him, right? And so, like, this is why I say this, because in the very next verse, Nathanael, who's going from, he's like questioning, he's not a believer. He's like, how do you even know me? You know, very confused of how the Messiah could come from Nazareth. The very next verse, he says, Rabbi, you are the Son of God! Exclamation point. You are the King of Israel. So right there, in a matter of a verse, we don't know how much dialogue was said. We don't know how much time had passed, but it's like the very next verse of how John records it in his gospel. And he goes from not being a believer to a believer. By him saying, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel, he is professing his faith right then. He's putting his faith in Jesus in that moment, looking at Jesus in the face. I can't wait to see Jesus face to face. I can't wait to give him a hug. I mean, I don't even know what that, like, I got goosebumps, like what that moment is going to be like, you know. And there's also going to be like so many people in heaven. So how's that going to work? Are we all going to be standing in a line waiting to give Jesus a hug? I don't know. I'll wait in the line forever. We have all of eternity. So like, where else are you going? Man. Anyway, verse 50. Jesus answered and said to him, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree. Do you believe? You will see greater things than these. In other words, Jesus is saying, Nathanael, you ain't seen nothing yet, bro. Verse 51, and he said to him, this is the last verse of chapter 1, most assuredly I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Now, this is a reference back to Genesis chapter 28, verse 12, Jacob's ladder, as you've heard it said. And I'm going to read that real quick if you're not familiar with it. Genesis 28:12. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached the heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So Jesus is telling Nathanael, I am the ladder. Now also keep in mind, he just said that he saw him underneath the fig tree. Now, whether that was underneath a literal fig tree or just referring to his devotionals, maybe, and it would make sense actually, that Nathanael was just reading about Jacob's ladder that day. That would make sense. And that's how Nathanael knew you are the Son of God, because you're talking about something I just read today. Maybe, I don't know. And actually, now that I think about it, he said that after he already declared his faith. So maybe not. But Nathanael clearly would have understood what Jesus was talking about, because he's a Jewish man and he was raised in the scriptures, and Jacob's a big character, in the Old Testament scriptures. So Jesus is saying, look, Nathanael, I am the ladder, and I am the connection between heaven and earth. It's me. And he's saying this face to face to him right here. And Jesus is saying to him, you're going to see the blessings flow back and forth. Like, you think that what I just said to you was something? You ain't seen nothing yet, my son. You ain't seen nothing yet. Think about your life either, or as well. It's what God has done in your life is amazing, and he has a 100% track record. But when and maybe you haven't fully surrendered, maybe you have put your faith in him, but you're still trying to kind of hang on to some things, or you haven't really surrendered everything to him. You haven't started to live your life as a living sacrifice. But when you do, God will blow your mind. Like me, for example, with music. If you know any of my testimony, like I used to be a pro poker player, never had any aspirations to do music or anything like that. Never had any aspirations to be to teach, to preach, none of that. And if you would have told me a little over a year ago that you would have 50 songs or so done now, 22 released, and this coming up Saturday, I'm going to be speaking and performing in front of 3,000 plus people. Like, if you would have told me that, I'd been like, what? I'd never even written a song before. But God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are way above our thoughts. So when you surrender your life to God, like, he will literally blow your mind with what he will bless you with. Abilities and talents and things that you never knew you were capable of. But it's not CoRy. It's because of him. This is all because of him. And I encourage you to surrender your life fully to him. If there's something that you're holding back, give it all to him. Let God lead your life. Let his will be done. In Jesus' name. Love you guys. See you tomorrow.